Hi everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. So today I wanted to share with you my vanilla crepe cake filled with white chocolate mousse. I love crepes and I love mousse, so I thought why not bring the two together to make a really fantastic cake. You know, spring is in the air, it's finally warming up. We have Easter coming up around the corner. We have Mother's Day in a few months, and of course summer is coming up soon, so this is such a great cake to celebrate, all those holidays and of course the warmer weather. It's really light and delicious. It's gonna take a few hours in the kitchen to make it, but in the end you're not gonna regret it. It's really delicious and everybody is gonna love it. I'm gonna start the recipe off by preparing the white chocolate mousse first, and that's because it needs to set up a little bit so that we can use it in our cake, and then I'm gonna show you how to make the vanilla crepes. I'm gonna start by preparing my custard first. So into a small bowl, I'm gonna whisk in 4 large egg yolks, and I've brought these up to room temperature. We're gonna add half a cup of white granulated sugar, and we're gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So I'm just gonna give all of this a good whisk and set it aside. And now we can prepare our custard base. So I have 1 cup of cream measured out into a large saucepan. I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. I'm gonna give this all a good whisk so you don't have any clumps. I'm gonna take this over to the stovetop and I'm gonna cook it for a minute or two just until that cream is really nice and hot, but you don't want it to be boiling. When you're cooking your cream, you wanna make sure that you're stirring constantly so that your cream doesn't burn. Once you take it off the stovetop, you might have a few clumps, and that's okay. Just take a whisk and whisk it until everything is really nice and smooth. And now we can start adding our hot cream into our egg yolks and sugar. So you wanna add a little bit at a time and whisk really well after each addition. I transferred my custard back into the saucepan, and now we're gonna take it back to the stovetop. I'm cooking my custard over a medium-low heat, and you wanna make sure that you're stirring it constantly, scraping the bottom of the pan so that the custard doesn't burn. It's really, really easy to burn it if you're not watching it carefully. So I'm gonna cook this for about 10-12 minutes, and we want the custard to really thicken up, and you're gonna know when it's ready. It's gonna change consistency, and it's gonna be like a thick pudding. And now we're ready to add our chocolate. So I have 1 cup of white chocolate chips. I'm gonna add it right in there. I'm gonna take my whisk and just whisk it until all that chocolate is melted. So our mousse base is all done now. I'm gonna set this custard into the refrigerator, and I transferred it into a smaller bowl. I'm gonna cover this, and you wanna let it chill completely until it's cold before we finish it off. Meanwhile, we can work on our crepes. And now for our crepes. So I've placed 8 large eggs into a large mixing bowl, and to this I'm gonna add 3 cups of whole milk. And the important thing about making crepes is you want everything to be at room temperature. Otherwise you're gonna have little clumps in the batter. And to this I'm gonna add 3/4 cup of water. To my batter I'm also gonna add half a cup of melted butter. And I'm gonna add 1/4 cup of white granulated sugar. You can also add like a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Once you have a really nice and smooth batter, it's time to add our flour. So today I'm using 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm gonna sift it in gradually using a fine mesh strainer. And this is to ensure that we don't have any clumps. You just wanna sprinkle a little bit at a time. Just give it a good whisk after each addition. So you wanna make sure you give your batter a really good whisk so you don't have any more clumps remaining. And then we're gonna let this batter stand for about 10 minutes. That's gonna allow some of the air bubbles in the batter to dissipate, and then we'll be ready to make our crepes. And now for making our crepes. So I'm heating a 9-inch nonstick pan over medium heat, and I've sprayed it down with a little bit of nonstick spray just to make sure the crepes don't stick whatsoever. I'm gonna add 1/4 cup of my crepe batter right into the center of my pan once it's hot. And you just wanna give it a quick tilt and spread that crepe batter evenly all the way to the edges. So these crepes cook fairly quickly. So in about 1.5 minutes, you're gonna see the edges here turn golden brown. And we're just gonna take a spatula, flip it over, and cook it for another 30 seconds on the other side. When your crepe is done, you just wanna turn it onto a plate. And I just like to stack mine and let the crepes cool here. I'm working on finishing my crepes, but meanwhile, I'm gonna also work on my mousse. So my custard has cooled completely, and now I'm gonna add 2 cups of whipping cream into my mixer bowl. I'm gonna whisk this cream on high speed until stiff peaks form. I have my whipped cream all ready, so for the first step, I'm actually gonna add some of my whipped cream into my custard first, and this is gonna thin it out a little bit so it'll be easier to fold it in. Just wanna take your spatula and incorporate it in. And now we can start adding our custard into our whipped cream. So I'm gonna add a little bit at a time and just use a spatula and fold everything in very, very gently. And that's the secret to making a great mousse. It's just taking the time to fold in everything very slowly so that whipped cream stays really light and fluffy. I'm folding in my last bit of custard into the cream, and now our mousse is ready. But at this point, it's a little too thin. It's gonna run right out of the crepe cake if we try to use it. So I actually am gonna set this into the refrigerator, and it's gonna sit anywhere from half an hour to an hour until it sets up a little bit, and then we'll be able to use our mousse as a filling in our cake. And now we're ready to assemble our crepe cake. So you want to let your mousse set in the refrigerator until it's really thickened up, and it'll be much easier to work with and to assemble the cake with. So I'm going to place my first crepe onto a cake platter here, and I'm using a red one today because I really want the cake to pop. So I'm going to add a little bit of my mousse into the center. Just spread it evenly to the edges here. I'm going to top with my next crepe. I'm going to do this for the remaining crepes. So I counted about 22 crepes with the crepe batter that I used today. You want to be pretty generous with the filling. You want to make sure, that you have a lot of mousse between each cake layer. I'm going to start by placing some blueberries on the top. And adding that layer of mousse on the top is going to just help keep everything in place. And now our crepe cake is all done and it's ready to go into the refrigerator. It looks so beautiful, but I do recommend adding these garnishes right before serving so everything looks very fresh and appealing. I'm gonna let this set in the refrigerator overnight so the crepes and the mousse can really set together, and then when it's all set, we'll come back and give it a try. And now our cake is all done, and I'm very pleased with how the garnishes came out on the top. If you don't have the edible flowers, don't worry, just add a few more fruits on top and it's gonna look just as beautiful. And now it's time to give it a try. I did take it out of the refrigerator a little bit sooner. Ideally, you want it to set overnight so the crepes and the mousse can really come together. I'm gonna get a few of the fruits off the top. Some of the mousse, some of the crepes. This cake looks so delicious. I had a hard time cutting it open. Absolutely delicious. I love how light and airy this cake is. The crepes and the mousse really complement each other, and it's not overwhelmingly sweet, and then the fruit add just the right amount of extra flavor. It's a really delicious cake. You guys are gonna definitely enjoy it. Make sure to make it around the spring holiday time, and if you do make it, you can share with me on Instagram. I love to see your creations. You can also follow me on Facebook and Pinterest. Don't forget to subscribe and share it online as well.